Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal development and cultural evolution. This is your host, Paul O'Brien, and we've got a very special show for you today. Anyone in a relationship of any kind can use simple partnership-based solutions to improve communication, trust, and intimacy by honoring themselves and others. But relationships between men and women can be especially fraught with misunderstanding. And today's guest works to illuminate a new understanding of the predicament of gender, the interaction of masculinity and femininity, and the principles of the paradigm of partnership. Our guest is Alison Armstrong, author of books including Keys to the Kingdom, which we are going to discuss today. Alison's study of men began in 1991. Her stated goal was to find out how she was bringing out the worst in them and how to bring out the best. Her success in understanding men naturally led to studying women's behavior and making vital connections between the two. Besides fulfilling the need to understand why men and women behave as they do, Alison offers practical partnership-based alternatives. Through her seminars, books, online programs, and media contributions, she has been giving millions of people access to more fulfilling lives, loving relationships, stronger families, and productive organizations. Hello, Alison, and welcome to the Pathways Show.
Hi, Paul. Glad to be here.
Now, I'm going to start out by just saying that I've often thought that modern women do not understand men as well as they think. And in fact, they lack empathy, almost expecting men to become more like women. Now, I think you probably share that perspective to some extent, but why is that? Or am I wrong?
The only part that you're wrong about, Paul, is the almost.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's the only part that I would say, no, it's not almost. And to be fair, there's some of it in men's point of view towards women. The way that I've articulated it is that when a woman looks at a man, she sees a hairy, misbehaving man who knows the right thing to do and is purposely not doing it and therefore deserves to be punished.
You mean a hairy misbehaving woman?
Sorry, yes, a hairy misbehaving woman. She sees a hairy, really a dysfunctional, defective, hairy misbehaving woman. And she's sure he knows the right thing to do. And he's being inconsiderate. He's actually misbehaving. He's acting up. He's immature. He can't be trusted. He abuses power. And he should be punished. And he should be limited in every way. And only give him enough juice to be handy. Powerful men are dangerous and they should not be tolerated, period. And if as a woman, if you're not taking men down a notch when they're full of themselves, then you're a slacker.
Now, I've heard you say in another interview what a low opinion of men you used to have before 1991.
Well, actually, right up and including early 1991, it was right about now. 31 years ago, and I didn't know what I thought, right? I didn't know what I thought till later.
Right.
But what I thought was that men were a lesser human than women, less evolved, less spiritual, less connected to God, less moral, less ethical, less visionary. I questioned if men had souls. I knew men did not have feelings, and therefore you could do anything you wanted because you weren't going to hurt them. And and I thought men were con artists and who were on their best behavior in the beginning until you fell for it, and then they would reveal their real selves. They would revert to their normal selves. And I'd been married and divorced. I had a son, and by golly, I was gonna raise my son to be successful with women. And I was clear how to do that was to have him be one.
Right.
I didn't know till later, till it was pointed out to me. I was trying to grind the man out of a very manly boy.
So you had a
And I
serious,
didn't,
serious emasculation agenda going on.
well, and I didn't even know it was that. To me, it was just the best way to protect myself from dangerous people. And my stepfather taught me that, best defense is a good offense. So, hand them over and then we'll talk.
Right.
And I didn't know this until 6 months after I decided to find out how I was bringing out the worst in men. I didn't know that I used everything to keep men off balance because I was so terrified of them.
Okay, so once you realize this, how did you go about the study of men? Because I'm totally taken by your work, and Keys to the Kingdom is a fantastic book. I hope everybody reads it. I mean, it's not a new book anymore, but it's still new to a lot of people, and I think
Yes.
men could get a lot out of it. But how did you go about the study of men to understand what we are about? What was your process?
Well, I mean, I know a lot of what you've paid attention to over the years is intuition. And I didn't even know that was the word for what I experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the Queen's Code, the sequel to Keys the Kingdom, it begins with Kimberly, the granddaughter of Claudia, one of the main characters in Keys the Kingdom.
Right.
It begins with her going to a seminar where her friend stands up and asks the seminar leader, why is it that men are wonderful in the beginning? And she goes on to accuse them of being sports watching, pizza eating, beer belching couch slugs. And that happened to me. That happened to me in February of 1991. A woman that I worked with, who was a friend, stood up next to me and accused all the men in the room, basically. There are about 200 people there. And she said that to the seminar leader. It was a landmark seminar. And she said, so why is that? They're wonderful in the beginning, and then they turn into this. Why is that? And the trainer, his name is Herb Tanzer, and he happened to have been a veterinarian. And I don't know if that shaped his response, but he I was watching very closely, right? In the way that they might say adult children of alcoholics watch people very closely.
Right.
And he liked it. He liked what she said. He wasn't put back by it. He liked it. And that caught my attention even more. And he deliberately checked her out, on purpose, head to toe. And this was someone who was always trying to catch men with her body, her sensuality, her sexuality, always dressed like that. She didn't make very much money working with me. I ran a nonprofit, and she said, that's okay, I'll just date a lot.
So she's going to get her money's worth that way.
She just would get men to buy her breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Okay, so now, you teach about feminine power in a very interesting way. And this woman had her form of feminine power, which was to use her sensuality and her looks in order to get leverage with men. But you say that the seductiveness of women can easily be too loud for men. And I found that very interesting.
Yeah, okay, can I finish the answer to the first part and then
absolutely.
go there?
Sorry.
So when the trainer called her a frog farmer, as in instead of turning frogs into princes, turning princes into frogs, when he did that and she completely deflected it, I had a vision of a farmhouse. And I was standing on the front porch in front of a couple of 100 of frogs with little human heads, and they were all the men that I had quickly revealed the con on. Do you know, I was going to provoke them to show me the con before I fell for it. Right. And, my ex-husband was right there in the front row, and my recent ex-boyfriend that I left my husband for was, et cetera, et cetera. And I sat there stunned. And I thought, I need to know how I'm doing this. I am clearly a successful frog farmer, a very successful frog farmer. I have no idea how I'm doing this because I'm so normal. I
Right.
better find out. And the question popped into my head, and that's what's happened now for 30 years. A question pops into my head. And the question was, what if men are responding to women? And thank goodness, Paul, it was what if men are responding to women? Because it allowed in the years that have followed to find out ways that men are responding to women and men are not responding to women at all. It has nothing to do with any woman. And to discover that they're mostly the opposite of what women think. The things women take personally are not, and the things women don't take personally are. And that, oh my gosh. So I started with that question because I ran a nonprofit. I made money on the side, being a kind of, which is really funny since I didn't know how angry I was at them. I was a kind of cheerleader for 3 single men. And they would use me as a sounding board and support, and they tell me their commitments and keep their promises, and I'd hold them accountable. And so those 3 men were my first peeps. They were my first peeps to observe and try to, when they did something, I'd try to figure out why they did it. And then I'd ask them if they did it for the reason I thought. And that was the beginning, because I was wrong. I was always wrong, and not just a little wrong. Like one man said, I would never do anything for that reason, and no self-respecting man would. Like, whoa. And to me, it was a perfectly good reason. Women do things for that reason all the time. You want to know what the reason was?
Yeah. What was it?
I asked him if he did what his mother wanted him to do. It's a grown-ass man, right? When he didn't want to do it, he spent his weekend doing it anyway. And I asked him if he did that to not upset her. And that's what he was horrified about. Like, he would never do anything in order to not upset somebody. I mean, to a man, that's dishonorable. You do the right thing no matter how you feel.
What did he state was his reason for doing?
Yes, I asked. Thank goodness. And I got schooled. I got schooled on duty. As a son, that it was his duty as a son to support his mother, whether he liked it or not. And I got to hear about loyalty. And I got to hear about honor. It doesn't care how I feel about it. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. It's the right thing to do. It's my duty as a son. Like,
right.
I mean, that was one of 2 really important times that happened early on. The first was when I thought maybe this is just never going to work between men and women. Maybe what women want, men don't want to be. And I knew what women wanted from men. We want the hero and the white horse. So maybe that's the problem. Women want a hero and men don't want to be a hero. And so I asked another man, his name is Steve, and I said, if you could be anything you could for a woman you loved, what would you be? And I had to learn to listen and wait and not interrupt or rephrase anything or options or anything. Early on, I learned that. It's one of the smartest things I ever did. And he was quiet for a long time, and he said, I'd be her hero. And my voice went, I'm like, really? And there was another long silence, and I thought he was like going to give me a different answer, because a woman would reconsider and he'd give me a different answer. And he said, actually, for all the women I love, if I could be their hero. And I'm like, really? And then another long silence, and now he's really going to change his mind. And then you could hear the sheepishness through the phone. It was so sweet. He said, well, to tell the truth, if I could be the hero of every woman I encountered every day, that would be nirvana.
That would be what?
Nirvana.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, wait a second. So I checked with the other guys. Steven said he wants to be a hero for women. Do you want to be a hero? And the same man, Mr. Duty, said, well, that's what's awesome about team sports. the chance that you'll be a hero for your teammates.
Mhm.
And then another man, he was older than the others. When I asked him, he was silent for a long time. And then he finally said, it's the only good thing about war.
Wow.
And I expected him to go on and say to be a hero for your country. And he didn't. He said to be a hero for the men you fight with.
Mhm. Wow.
Right. And so I am sitting there going, wait a second. Women want a hero. Men want to be a hero. This should work. Right. This ought to work. And then a little voice in my head said, well, Alison, when was the last time you let a man be your hero?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, right. And it was just like just all played out. How much as women constantly proving that we don't need men, constantly saying, I can do that myself. I can do that myself. I can do that myself.
Anything you can do,
And
I can do better.
my mother used to dance around the kitchen singing that. And that when Guys and Dolls came out, that became my mother's mantra. Do you know the impression? I'm like an 8 or 9-year-old girl. I mean, that was her war cry when
Right.
I think it was about the time she left my father, right? And which I didn't find out till later. She lied about it for years, but it just, yeah, we're just so busy. The thing that you saw happen at the beginning of the 80s already was happening. It was rising up with, we're sick of being treated like second-class citizens. What we contributed, Rosie the Riveter in World War II, right? And proved we could do all the jobs that you did while you were gone. We proved we could. And now you want us to go back to this thing that seems so much less meaningless. We were part of something important, right? And so all this happening and very, very confusing. I was born in 1960, and I was left with the message: you absolutely have to have a man. You have to have a man, or you're worth less. If you don't have a man, you're worth less.
Well, historically,
but don't ever need him. Don't ever need him. Have one. Go ahead.
Historically, women have been dependent upon men economically, or physically.
And physically.
Yeah.
Physically.
And now
yes.
they're not. Now they're not. In fact, even worse, they can't really depend upon men to provide for them. So, I thought it's interesting the way that you characterize the king. I love these stages of male development that you go through in the book. I found it very enlightening. And you talk about the king relishes providing. Well, that's something a hero, that's a kind of a heroic thing. But if women don't want to be provided for, they just want to compete, or they want to say, well, I don't need your help, then the men don't have the opportunity to exercise that part of their nature. And but so how do women balance? How do they balance receptivity? You talk about the feminine power of receptivity, and I love that. For years I've been sort of preaching that. I'm saying receiving and taking are two totally different things. And receiving is an act of generosity. When you receive something that I want to give you, you're actually giving me a gift, and it just feels really good. So I love that you bring up this feminine power of receptivity. But how do modern women who can't really rely on men making a commitment to be, the primary breadwinner or the big provider or whatever, how do they balance autonomy and receptivity?
Well, remember when I said you were wrong about almost, right? You said that was correct. They almost think men should be like women. Remember when I said that in the very beginning?
Right.
The only part was the almost. I completely disagree that women cannot rely upon men to provide. We don't rely upon men to provide. We keep proving that we don't need them to provide. We will insult them if they try to provide. I can open the door myself. What do you think I am, you idiot?
Right. I remember those days.
But but men have, this isn't merely cultural, right? In my observation of the last 30 years, and even before studying human behavior, if you look at things as first instinctual and then cultural, that culture is the expression of instinct, which is the level I like to deal with. We look at the level of instinct, it makes sense. May I? If I may, it ties right back into what you're asking.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So what we've identified as a hierarchy of instincts, and the first instinct being procreate. Now, yes, that's obviously sex, but it's not just sex. It's you building your business, right? It's you building your foundation. That's creation. It's procreate, okay?
Right.
And procreate, then protect. What do I mean by then protect? Well, it's natural after you created something to protect it, but also procreate trumps protect. And this is important because it's procreate, then protect. This is why safe sex has to be taught, because procreate trumps protect. Every species risks their life to procreate. And every entrepreneur gambles their fortune instead of protecting it, right? To procreate. And but then it's protect, then provide. Mm-hmm. And so the instinct to protect trumps the instinct to provide. And this is one of the things that drives women and children crazy, because we want men to provide for us, but if he sees a danger, he's going to protect us. He's going to say no to that thing in order to protect whatever it is that would be put at risk by giving us that, right? Like he's going to say no to providing experience to the child in order to protect them from physical danger or otherwise. And then it gets worse. If we all want, both men and women want men and women to be in provide mode. We want everybody to give and give and give and give. But then we criticize a man because he didn't do it perfectly, right? One man asked, how come I never get 80 points? I get 0 or 100, right? And so we criticize a man, which would change a woman effectively, by the way. But we don't know that criticizing a man is, amongst many things, that causes a man to revert from provide back to protect, and worse than that, protect myself.
Right. Yeah, I thought
yes, very, and protect. If I have to protect myself from you, that's going to trump me protecting you, and it's certainly going to trump me providing for you. And that's why women think they can't trust men to provide, because we keep attacking you and you can't provide for us. But if a woman is doing the reverse, and this was interesting because I wanted to find out how I brought out the worst in men, and thought maybe I'd learn something that would bring out the best. When I stopped attacking men showed up as better than I thought your best could be. And I didn't do anything good. Yeah, I just stopped attacking.
I thought that was very profound. That was very profound. You laid down your sword and things just changed as a result of that, even before you became proactive about supporting men. Because like you say in your book, whenever men are made less powerful, they are less powerful for us women.
Yes.
And that's so profound. Well, we're just about running out of time, unfortunately. God, this is so much fun. And it's a great topic. And so we've got a couple more minutes. What would you like to leave us with, or leave the audience with, other than my advice is to get your book right away. But other than that, what advice might you leave us with today?
Let's see. If I had it all my way, men and women would go to AlisonArmstrong.com, and on the home page, there's a thing that says, what makes men and women so different? And it's a 30-minute clip from our Understanding Women workshop, which keeps cross-referencing men and women, men and women, men and women, in order to understand women. I created it, I thought, for men, but women don't know why they do it. They do anyway. But this particular segment addresses the subject of safety. And safety is the most important thing to understand, to take all the differences from that point. And just watch it. Just watch it. It will change how you think about what's happening here. And so I would do that. And I would also say to women, I'd say to men, thank you for who you are. I owe my life, the quality of my life, the magic of my life to having decided. And I thought it would take 2 or 3 months to learn everything worth knowing about you, because of course you're shallow. But I literally learned about being a woman from men. I fell in love with women through the eyes of men. And that's what I'd leave women with. You don't have to work hard. You don't have to work hard to get men to love you. Men already love women. What there's to work hard at is stop attacking men so much and end up, you get them to not care, to be unwilling to care because it hurts too much to care.
Because they're protecting them.
That's where we're going on.
Well, Alison, thank you so much for being on the Pathways Show. There's so much more we could explore, but we've run out of time for today. But we'll have to have you back. You've got another book, The Queen's Code, which you are turning into an audio book, which I'm really looking forward to. And I want to make sure to remind our listeners about your website, AlisonArmstrong.com, all one word. Now, for those who may have tuned into Pathways late today, this is your host, Paul O'Brien, author of Intuitive Intelligence, a book that shares the theme of Pathways, which is personal and cultural evolution. Now, don't worry, you can play and share this interview whenever you want via the internet or as a free podcast, and I'll tell you how in a minute. Today, we've been visiting with Alison Armstrong, author of Keys to the Kingdom and The Queen's Code and other things that you can find on her website. I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into Pathways, which is broadcast and streamed on the internet at www.kboo.fm every other Sunday morning at 8:30 USA Pacific time. Even better, podcasts of today's show, which you can listen to and forward to others, are available for free at divination.com. And that's spelled DIVI nation.com, as well as via iTunes or my YouTube channel and other free podcast servers. This is Paul O'Brien reminding you to tell your friends about Pathways Radio and podcasts. And thanks again to Alison Armstrong and to all of you listeners for tuning in and being a part of the Pathways conversation.